I sat across from my mother at her perfectly set dinner table, her smile so sweet it could rot teeth. The roast chicken smelled like childhood. I thought I was safe, until my phone lit up beneath the napkin. "Leave now, don't say a word. She knows everything." My brother. We hadn't spoken in years. I looked up, heart racing. Her eyes met mine, calm, expectant. What did she know? What had she done? I swallowed hard, unsure if I was already too late. That night, I thought I was coming home for peace, but it turns out I'd walked right into the trap. Dinner with my mother had always followed the same script. The table was set like a photo from a lifestyle blog. Linen napkins folded perfectly, silverware polished to a shine. She plated the roast chicken with practiced elegance, smiled like a politician, and tilted her phone just enough to catch the angle for TikTok. "This is for my Sunday Dinner with Mom series," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "People adore it." I nodded, though I hadn't agreed to be filmed. I never did. Somehow I always ended up in the frame. She tapped record and resumed the performance. "Amanda came all the way from New York to spend time with me," she cooed to the lens. "Isn't she just the sweetest daughter?" I forced a smile. My fork hovered over the green beans. They were cold. My phone buzzed. Hidden beneath the napkin, I glanced down discreetly. A single message. "Leave now. Don't say a word. She knows everything." It was my brother, Tyler, the one who disappeared from our lives 5 years ago without a trace. No goodbye, no explanation, just vanished. I hadn't heard from him since. I looked up slowly. My mother's eyes were on me, warm, curious, calculating. Or maybe I was imagining it. Was she watching me, or simply waiting for a reply to her last comment? The room suddenly felt too quiet. I shifted in my seat. "I forgot to grab my pills from the car," I muttered. "Be right back." She waved her hand. "Of course, honey, take your time." Outside, the evening air was thick. I leaned against the car door, phone clutched in my palm, trying to breathe. What did she know? And why would Tyler, who had no reason to reach out, warn me? I scrolled back to his number. There was no follow-up, just that single sentence. I didn't leave, not that night. I went back inside, sat through dinner, smiled for her audience, answered her questions about work, about my failed marriage, about whether I was finally ready to come home for good. And I watched her closely. The truth is, I had already given up New York. My father had passed 18 months ago, and I came back to help her sort through the estate. She cried in my arms at the funeral, told me I was her only rock. I didn't hesitate. I declined a major startup offer to stay. She never asked, but she didn't need to. At first, it felt right. Healing, we baked together. I drove her to doctor appointments. She told me I reminded her of Dad. "You have his soul," she'd whisper, stroking my hair like I was still 9. But slowly, things shifted. She began asking me to pay the electric bill, just this once. I covered the property taxes, then groceries, then everything. When I brought it up, she said, "What's mine is yours, darling. Why are we keeping score?" Sometimes she'd fake a limp, or say she felt faint if I mentioned moving out. "I just don't want to be alone again," she'd sigh, lying on the couch, hand over her chest, like a widow in an old drama. And always, her voice was coated in syrup. Too sweet. So sweet it stuck in my throat. Once I told her I was going on a date. The next morning, she was in the ER for chest pains. The doctor found nothing. She smiled as I drove her home, her eyes dry. "You really don't understand what your absence does to me," she said. I canceled my next date. She didn't need to tell me not to go. She never had to say the words directly. I learned what upset her. I learned to avoid the silent treatment that followed every tiny betrayal. I learned that sometimes the only way to keep her happy was to shrink. Looking back, I can't tell you when love became obligation or when affection started to feel like surveillance. But I know now that there was always a script, and I had never written a single line of it. That night, after I washed the dishes and she retired to her room, I sat alone on the back porch, phone in hand. I stared at Tyler's message again. She knows everything. I didn't know what she knew. But I knew one thing. I hadn't been living in my childhood home. I'd been living on a stage, and the audience, they were cheering for the wrong character. I was halfway through my morning coffee when the next message from Tyler arrived. No greeting, no explanation, just a link. "Read it, it's her." It took me a moment to realize where the link led. Reddit. A post in a parenting support group. The username wasn't familiar, but the story was. My adult daughter moved back home after her marriage failed. She's entitled, lazy, and spends all day on her phone. I've given up everything for her, and she treats me like a maid. She's emotionally abusive, manipulative, and I fear for my health living with her. I reread the post, fingers tightening around my mug. It had been up for 2 weeks. The comments were a mix of sympathy and outrage. People offering comfort, donations, and advice on cutting off toxic adult children. And then I saw it. A PayPal link. She was collecting money. I clicked through the post history, dozens more. All written in the same syrupy, passive-aggressive tone she used with me in real life. In one, she described my panic attack as a narcissistic outburst. In another, she said she'd given up a job offer to take care of me, when I knew for a fact she hadn't worked in over a decade. Each lie was worse than the last, and they all pointed to me. Scrolling deeper, I found something that made my skin go cold. I once sabotaged my daughter's wedding because I knew he wasn't right for her. Sometimes, as a parent, you have to make hard choices. I remembered that day, the power outage, the missing dress, the photographer canceling at the last minute, a series of misfortunes I had chalked up to bad luck. But now, I opened my contacts and called an old friend, Marla, one of my bridesmaids. We hadn't spoken in years, but I needed the truth. She answered, hesitant at first, but when I asked about the wedding, her voice changed. "I didn't say anything back then because your mom begged me. She said you were too stressed and she'd handle it." But, Amanda, she asked me to tell the caterer the wrong date, and the photographer, she canceled him herself. I hung up, nauseous. Later that afternoon, another message came. A screenshot this time from Tyler again. It was a chat between my mother and an old college friend of mine. My name came up halfway through. "Don't mention I borrowed money from her. She's getting paranoid. Just say you helped me." That was the last drop. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I opened my father's old laptop, stored in the guest room closet. It hadn't been touched since he passed. I'd never had the heart to go through it. But now, hands trembling, I booted it up. The inbox took a while to load. Then I saw it, an email labeled "For Amanda" with a scheduled send date that had never sent. I clicked it open. If you're reading this, Amanda, then I didn't get the chance to tell you myself. But I know your mother. I've lived with her. And if she's done what I feared she would, Then you've already figured out too much. I'm sorry. Attached were 2 files. The first, a PDF scan of his original will. My name listed as sole beneficiary. Not joint, not contingent, sole. The second, a video file. I hesitated, then hit play. It was shaky, clearly self-recorded, and he looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. She told me she'd leave if I didn't change it, said she'd ruin you. She said she could make you look unstable. And you know what? I believed her. So I signed the new one. But this is the truth. You were always the strong one, Amanda. But being strong doesn't mean carrying her weight forever. I paused the video, tears running down my cheeks before I realized it. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I just missed him, missed his voice, his quiet strength, the way he always saw through people, even if he never said so. I sat on the floor for a long time. Later that night, I printed the will and tucked it into a folder. As I turned the last page, I noticed something strange. The corner had been torn, jaggedly, like someone had ripped it hastily. My breath caught. She'd found it before, and she tried to destroy it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the papers across the room or storm into her bedroom demanding answers. That's what she would have done. That's what she expected. Instead, I smiled more. I started helping her more around the house, offering to cook, massaging her shoulders while she watched her crime shows, asking about her past like I was genuinely interested. I praised her in front of her friends on Facebook, left comments on her videos, even reposted her Sunday dinner clips with cheerful emojis. "You've really changed," she told me one night, her hand resting on mine. "I'm so proud of you." I squeezed her hand back, eyes wide, voice soft. "I just realized how much you've done for me." That night, I moved a tiny microphone into the kitchen light fixture. A week later, I installed a pinhole camera in the living room, just below the bookshelf she loved to rearrange obsessively. Then another one in the hallway, near the door of her office. I even used a speech analytics AI I found online, one that detects tone shifts, hesitations, stress indicators. I ran hours of her recorded monologues through it, then cross-referenced the data with her behavior. I wasn't trying to catch her in a lie. I was trying to map her entire script. Every time she said, "You're the only one I have," it was paired with a request for money or guilt. When she said, "I'm not feeling well," it followed a discussion about me moving out. Every "you know I love you" was statistically tied to a moment she'd just been caught manipulating something. It wasn't affection, it was control, measured, repeated, weaponized. I recorded everything, built folders, labeled files, backed them up in multiple drives. I even started writing it like a research paper, patterns of emotional coercion in maternal dynamics. I imagined defending it in court, or in therapy, or just to myself. And all the while, she believed she had me back under her spell. "You've matured so much," she said, brushing a crumb from my shoulder. "I was right to worry about you in New York. You're better here, with me." I nodded. Of course I did. That was the game. But the real twist came when I started investigating the house. Technically, it had belonged to both my parents. My father had left his portion to me, according to the original will. But the updated will, signed under pressure, left everything to her. Still, with the legal mess surrounding that, I needed to know, what had she done since? A quick search at the county records office gave me an answer I didn't expect. She didn't own the house anymore. It had been quietly transferred 3 months after my dad's funeral to a man named David Crosswell. The name meant nothing to me. I dug deeper. David was a retired insurance broker who had once lived in the same neighborhood as us years ago. Photos on his social media showed him and my mother having lunch, hiking, even vacationing together in Arizona. Pictures dated just weeks after Dad passed away. I called the lawyer. "She transferred the deed under a quitclaim," he said, scrolling through the files I sent him. "Technically legal, but deeply suspicious." "Why?" I asked, though I already knew. "To hide assets," he said, "likely to avoid probate scrutiny or to prevent future division with you." I stared at the screen. My fingers curled slowly into a fist. She hadn't just taken the house, she had erased the possibility of me ever reclaiming it. As if she anticipated I'd fight back one day, as if she wanted to make sure I'd get nothing. That night, I sat alone in my car in the driveway for an hour, staring at the windows, the lights glowing warmly inside like nothing had changed. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to leave. To never step foot in this house again. To never wake up wondering if the woman smiling over breakfast was calculating my every move. But when I told my lawyer I was thinking of walking away from it all, he leaned forward, voice low and firm. "If you leave this unchecked," he said, "she'll do it to your brother next, or someone else." And that stopped me, because he was right. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about prevention. I couldn't undo what she'd done, but I could make sure the next version of me didn't fall for the same performance. So I opened my laptop, loaded the folder I'd labeled Final Stage, and began organizing everything, every video, every audio clip, every bank record, screenshot, and chat log. And then I created a file called David Crosswell. It was time he got a call. The invitations had gone out 2 weeks earlier, gold-foiled cardstock, with cursive lettering sent to every family member within driving distance. Eleanor's 65th, an evening of celebration and gratitude. She insisted on a formal dress code, a catered dinner, a string quartet, and of course, a live stream. "I want everyone to see how far we've come," she told me, adjusting her pearls in the mirror. "It's time the world knew how perfect this family is." Perfect. That word clung to me all evening like an insult dressed in lace. The backyard had been transformed with fairy lights, white roses, and a rented marquee. Guests floated from one table to another with flutes of champagne. My mother moved through them like a politician, smiling, kissing cheeks, holding hands just long enough to register sincerity. Her phone was always within reach, capturing moments, posting updates. The comments flooded in. "You're glowing, Eleanor." Such a queen. I stood by the dessert table, my hand on the pocket of my coat, feeling the weight of the USB drive I'd hidden there. My chest was tight, my fingers were cold. My heart pounded so loudly, I thought someone would hear it over the violin music. At 7:45 p.m., just before the cake, I walked up to the microphone. She was standing with her arm around Aunt Lillian, laughing too loudly at a joke that hadn't landed. When I cleared my throat, she turned. Her eyes met mine, and I saw it. Not panic, not fear, anticipation. She thought this was a toast. "Before we light the candles," I said, smiling softly, "I wanted to share something, a little tribute to Mom." There was polite applause. She stepped aside, mouthing, "Oh, sweetheart," hand over her heart. I plugged in the USB and pressed play. The first image was my father, in his office, speaking into his webcam. The laughter died instantly. Gasps scattered through the crowd as he spoke. About the will, about her threats, about the version of events she'd told everyone that wasn't true. Then came screenshots, her Reddit posts, one after another, scrolling in silence. Then audio recordings, her voice, cold, calculating. She thinks I'm sick, and that's how I keep her here. No one would believe her over me. I've been building my story for years. I turned to the crowd. This is what she didn't want you to see. A few people had their phones out now, recording. My mother's face had gone pale. Her mouth opened, then closed. She took a step forward, then stumbled. She grabbed her chest, let out a sharp cry, and collapsed onto the grass. Screams erupted. Someone yelled for a doctor. I didn't move. She lay there, motionless, one arm across her torso like a heroine in a soap opera. Guests knelt around her, fanning her, calling 911. I stood still, hands by my sides, watching her face. 30 seconds passed. Her eyes fluttered open. Then, seeing the lack of reaction from me, she sat up slowly, dazed but suddenly alert. I'm fine, she whispered. Just the shock. A murmur moved through the crowd. Skepticism, confusion, and then clarity. A voice from the back. A woman I hadn't spoken to in years. Enough, she said loudly. She did this to me too. Lied about me, ruined my marriage, then made me apologize for it. Heads turned. It was my cousin Camille. My mother's expression didn't change, but her fingers curled slightly in the grass. Later that night, I didn't sleep. Neither did she. At 2 a.m., she went live on Facebook. Tears streamed down her cheeks. My daughter, Amanda, she faked everything. That video, it's edited. The documents, forged. She's sick. She needs help. Please pray for us. The comments poured in. We love you, Eleanor. Stay strong, Mama. I didn't respond. I just opened my inbox and attached a folder. Every recording, every document, every timestamp. Then I sent it to the board of directors of the Circle of Hope Foundation, where she served as executive director. By morning, their response was brief. We are terminating Eleanor Reese, effective immediately. Within 48 hours, sponsors pulled out. Her TikTok followers plummeted. Donation links were disabled. But I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel anything. I sat at the edge of my bed, phone in hand, the screen glowing with headlines. I'd spent months preparing for that moment, planning, documenting, waiting for the perfect reveal. And now that it had come and gone, I was left with silence. No applause, no confetti, just quiet. It wasn't rage that filled me. It was emptiness. The silence didn't last long. 3 days after her firing, the bank called. A fraud investigation had been opened regarding suspicious transfers tied to the house. The quitclaim deed to David Crosswell had triggered a deeper audit, and questions were surfacing about forged signatures, misappropriated funds, and discrepancies between reported assets and recorded ones. I didn't speak much during those calls. I just forwarded files, documents, recordings, screenshots, facts, let them speak. I was done talking. She tried, of course. She left voicemails layered in her usual flavors. Confusion, indignation, pleading. Amanda, how could you do this to me? Then, sweetheart, I forgive you. Let's talk. And finally, you think you've won? You think people will love you when they see what you really are? But no one was listening to her anymore. The world had already seen. The legal process moved slower than justice should. But my lawyer was firm. The house, half of it at least, was legally mine under my father's original will. With the fraudulent transfer exposed, we had leverage. We negotiated a settlement. She lost the deed. I sold the house. The check cleared a week later. I split the money 3 ways. A portion to my brother Tyler, who had been pushed out of the family years before I ever realized what was happening. Another portion to Mrs. Eldridge, our old neighbor, who used to sneak snacks to me through the fence when I was grounded for reasons I didn't understand. When I handed her the envelope, she hugged me tightly. Then she whispered something that made my stomach twist. "Did you ever find out she tried to have you committed?" I pulled away, startled. "She called me," Mrs. Eldridge said. "Said you were unraveling, that she was afraid for her safety. She asked me to sign a letter supporting a psychiatric evaluation. I refused, but, Amanda, she meant it. She wanted to institutionalize you." The world dimmed for a second. Not from shock, but from confirmation. She really would have locked me away just to stay in control. Later that day, I stood at her front door one last time. I'd sent her a message asking for 5 minutes, just 5. She answered in a wrinkled robe, eyes swollen, hair tied back messily like she hadn't slept in days. She looked smaller, not older, not frail, just less powerful. She said nothing at first, then stepped aside and let me in. We sat across from each other on the same couch where I used to curl up as a child, pretending she loved me in the way other mothers did. Now there were no lies between us. She reached out first. "Amanda, I made mistakes. I was scared. I thought I was doing what was best. Please, we can fix this." I shook my head slowly. "I didn't come here for an apology." She blinked. "Then why?" "To look at you and feel nothing," I said. And I did. Not hatred, not pity, just clarity. She cried. She begged. "I'm your mother," she whispered. "Doesn't that mean anything?" It did, once, but not anymore. I stood up, walked to the door, and as I opened it, I felt the weight fall off my shoulders, not like something being taken from me, but like something I chose to leave behind. She didn't follow, didn't scream, didn't call after me, just silence. And it was the most peaceful sound I'd ever heard. In the weeks that followed, people kept asking what I was going to do next. Was I suing? Was I going to the press? Was I planning to tell the whole world what she'd done? I said no, because I didn't need the world to punish her. She had built her identity on attention. Taking it away was enough. I wasn't broken. I was just done. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do to someone who tried to destroy you is nothing at all. The apartment was small, just under 500 square feet, but every inch of it was mine. A studio on the top floor of an old brick building with squeaky stairs and a rusted fire escape. The walls were scuffed. The radiator hissed when it worked. The windows faced east, which meant the sun woke me early, warm and uninvited. Still, I loved it. I painted the walls a soft gray, bought a second-hand couch I upholstered myself, and hung string lights above the bed like I had wanted to do in college but never could. My mother used to say lights like that were tacky. "Makes the place look like a dorm," she'd scoff. Now I flipped them on every night, just because I could. I made a budget for the first time in years, sat down with a notebook and a calculator, and figured out how much I needed to live, to save, to rebuild. I made lists of what I owned, what I owed, what I wanted. It was tedious and thrilling. I started writing, not fiction, not a memoir, just the truth. I opened a blog and called it How to Survive a Narcissistic Mother. The first post was simple. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And this is not your fault. It got 5 comments the first night, then 20, then 100. People wrote to me with their stories. Some of them sounded so much like mine, it made my hands tremble. I wasn't just building a new life, I was building something that could hold others too. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I saw a name I hadn't seen in a decade. Caleb. The message was brief. I saw your blog. I didn't know everything back then. I'm sorry. He'd been the one, or he could have been. We were engaged once before my mother had a health scare that pulled me back home for 3 months. During that time, she called him late at night, told him I was under pressure, that I wasn't ready, that maybe he should let me go. He did. I thought he'd walked away because I wasn't enough. Now I knew better. We met for coffee. He was older, of course, a little grayer at the temples, but his eyes were the same, kind, steady. We talked for hours. Not about the past, not at first. We talked about now. What we'd learned, what we'd lost, what we'd finally stopped apologizing for. It wasn't romance, not yet. Maybe not ever, but it was real. That night, I walked into my little apartment, closed the door, and leaned against it, feeling the quiet settle over me like a blanket. Then I cried, not from sadness, from relief, from finally feeling safe in a space that no one else controlled. No one would open my mail without asking. No one would comment on how I ate, or who I texted, or when I came home. No one would guilt me for existing. I cried because I was alone, and because it was beautiful. Eventually, the legal proceedings ended. The accounts were settled. The press moved on. My mother faded from public conversation like a scandal outlived. But she still called, sometimes, left voicemails, sent birthday cards. I never blocked her. But I never answered. I wasn't angry, I was clear. We weren't family, not anymore. We were people who shared DNA, that was all. I didn't need to make her understand what she had done. I just needed to stop needing her to understand. Boundaries weren't walls. They were doors I could lock. And I did. I started speaking at small support groups, then larger ones. My blog grew. So did the messages. One day, I got an email from a woman in her 50s who said, "I thought I was crazy until I read your story." That's when I knew what I'd built wasn't just survival. It was a legacy. I didn't rewrite my family history, but I rewrote my role in it. At a mental health conference in Chicago, I stood in front of 100 people and told my story for the first time out loud. I didn't cry. I didn't falter. I ended with this. I don't need my mother to forgive me. I don't even need her to admit what she did. I just needed to stop being afraid of her, and now I'm not. The room was quiet. Then came the applause. Not because I was brave, but because I was free.